He is the guy from the Trib. You know him, you love him, and can be seen in Wilmerding from time to time. But he's also part of that Thomas Klein School of Law, Duquesne University up there on the bluff. He is Joe Mystic, and we have a lot to get to, Joe. And let's start by talking about this cabinet. Okay, Gabbard, Rubio, names that we know and make sense, but then there are questions about people like Robert Kennedy and also being involved in this administration, Elon Musk. Mike Huckabee is actually going to be involved as the U.S. ambassador to Israel. I'm kind of in on that. But just what do you make of some of these selections, sir? And good evening.
Good evening, Rob. It's great to be here with you always. Every president is entitled to put his or her own team together, and Donald Trump is certainly no exception. But the Constitution does provide for advice and consent from the United States Senate, so there are limits. I think we saw that Matt Gaetz probably exceeded those limits, and when it was made clear to him that he probably would not have the votes, he decided to drop out. But there are a couple others, maybe a few others, that could be problematic. Yet, you want the president to pretty much have his picks.
You know, when I think of some of these names, especially Robert Kennedy Jr., a Republican, I guess you could consider him now, boy, it has been a very strange political cycle, has it not, sir?
Yeah, it's peculiar. There are a lot of people changing teams here, in this election. This is one of those watershed moments in American politics. It's pretty unusual, for things to take off the way they have. But we'll see how it all turns out. He does have some very interesting picks.
So now I see in the Wall Street Journal something trending just within the last hour. He's talking about putting a 20% tariff on everything that comes in from Mexico. He is swinging a big bat, making a lot of bold decisions. But Let's face it, government is what government is. So how much of this stuff do you think he's going to be able to do as quickly as he says he's going to be able to do it, Joe?
Well, the tariffs are a little scary because they'll increase the cost of living for the average homeowner, average family, average citizen. Those tariffs get paid by the consumer at the end of the day. So if an exporter of goods to this country has to pay more, then the consumer has to pay more because they're not going to absorb that cost. It will be absorbed by the end consumer.
All right, so the Trib, others reporting on what the Department of Justice is saying they're going to do on some charges that are currently involving the soon-to-be president again. Some say, could he actually give himself immunity? So you teach at that great law school that is teaching lawyers every day, so make some legalese sense of this if you can.
Well, there is, an argument that he could, in fact, give himself a pardon. We've not seen that before, but there are a lot of things we're seeing these days that we have not seen before. So that part remains to be seen. I wouldn't put it past them to give it a try. There is an argument, and we saw it today. I guess it was in the New York Times, I think, but it was also in an op-ed some months ago, written by Bruce Ledowitz, a colleague of mine at Duquesne Law School, and a constitutional scholar, who suggested that the right thing for Joe Biden to do here is to pardon Donald Trump, and that would clear the air and get the new president off to a cleaner start than he might have otherwise.
When I think about where we are in our country right now, the one thing I think we have to do is try to at least get beyond some of this stuff so we can start moving forward as a country. Do you think that America will give this guy who's been so volatile as far as his verbiage on the campaign trail an opportunity? Are we that desperate that everybody might just say, you know what, I didn't vote for the guy, I'm not excited about it, but I at least owe him the opportunity? Can we do that as a nation, Joe, do you think?
Well, there are those folks who want him to succeed even though they were not for him, or even though they were vigorously opposed to him, because if he does better, America does better. So, if you have the best interest of the country at heart, you have to be pulling for him. But that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow because we are still an evenly divided nation. He won by the lowest margin in decades. He won the swing states by a very narrow margin in each of those swing states. But under the Electoral College system, of course, he gets all the electoral votes from each of those states. So this time he won both the college and the popular vote. but not by much. So we're still a very, very nearly evenly divided nation. It was a few points in the Democrats' direction the last time, and it's a few points in a couple of points in his direction this time.
The thing that I'm looking at, though, is Mr. McCormick now getting ready to make his way to the nation's capital, but also Senator Casey getting ready to step aside. Look, I want Mr. McCormick to do great. I think he and Mr. Fetterman are going to be really working hard because of a lot of the things that the administration is going to be trying to get done, and they're going to have to try to get together. And Senator Casey has really left an incredible legacy. What do you see in his future, Joe?
Well, I'm not sure it would be a future in politics. There's, what else could he possibly run for? He's been at the top of the pyramid all these years. However, he can remain a public servant, remain a good citizen, a contributing citizen. Oftentimes, someone in his position with the kind of reputation he has will find their way into the nonprofit sector. And that's something that he would do very well. He's certainly an accomplished former United States senator in a few short weeks.
Hey, tomorrow, Mr. Phil DeLaCente is going to join me on the Colin Dunlap show. Yep, your cum, your family, your familia, and we're going to talk about a number of things, including trying to curb crime and punishment and what's happening in America today as far as gun laws are concerned. And you're educating your incredible future attorneys every day on this stuff, and no one does it better. But is there a way through the court system that we can actually start to maybe curtail crime, or does that have to be left up to others who are fighting crime, meaning law enforcement or those serving office?
Well, it starts with the police officers on the street, and we're sort of out of police officers in the city of Pittsburgh. Mayor Gainey has de facto defunded the police, which is not a good thing if you're worried about the quality of life in downtown and in the neighborhoods. So we have to get back up to speed in terms of the manpower in our police force. Once you do that, then you can obviously begin to deal with things like diversionary programs, rehabilitation programs. We can return our focus to those kinds of things, which we've been doing for some years now, but we have to do it more effectively. Crime generally is down, but urban disorder is up, and urban disorder is really disruptive to the quality of life in our urban centers.
Hey, I got something for you. If you have a little downtime this holiday season before I tell you goodbye. So I'm at home today doing laundry and getting caught up on everything. So I'm doing some channel surfing, and on Turner Classic Movies, the great Edward G. Robinson, who probably was 56, 57 at the time, being that he was born in 1900, it was in the late 50s, he played an attorney, former DA. The movie was entitled Illegal, that he kind of, sent an innocent man to the electric chair and then kind of went on the other side, and defending criminals. I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but it's just even fascinating in black and white over almost 70 years ago, watching Hollywood depict a courtroom and the practice of law. And we've seen Law and Order on the air now for 20 plus years. Why are people, the new Matlock, why are we so in love with what you teach? What's the fascination there?
Well, it's where the rubber meets the road in our everyday lives. We all know someone or related to someone or ourselves have been in a little bit of trouble for violating the rules of society. There are two sets of rules. There's what we would call God's laws, and if you break those, then you're in big trouble. And then there are man's laws, which are pretty much like breaking the rules as opposed to violating a serious proscription that society has laid down. But since we all live that and it's all around us, it's the thing with which we are most interested. You can look at some of these podcasts. They're true crime podcasts, and the shows you mentioned, of course. We're all drawn to that. It fascinates us because we all know somebody who's been in a similar situation.
Hey, keep up the great work. It's always nice catching up with you, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Great, Rob. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Wonderful being with you.
Thomas Klein School of Law, Duquesne University, Professor Joe Mistic, also great columnist for the Trib. We'll come back. Very significant day in Pittsburgh history, and I'll explain when we come back at your Pratt Pack. Good evening.